Hello and welcome to the webinar entitled Top 6 Reasons for Hair Loss. I hope that everyone is logged in and you can see the screen clearly because it's time to get started. It's so awesome that you are here. I just want to commend you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in this webinar with me. So before we get started, let me tell you that this is just going to be a brief, informative webinar about hair loss, but it's totally interactive, meaning that I invite you to participate by asking questions. Now, I'll only be able to view the questions, but during the presentation, just jot down your questions, and there will be a segment during the webinar for Q&A. So, for those of you who do not know me, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Anderson. I have been a licensed stylist for over 20 years. I've practiced trichology and natural health since 2013. I'm certified in a non-surgical hair replacement and medical hair loss. Now, I am the resident specialist at the Hair Treatment Center inside Trinity Lace Wigs and Unisex Salon located in San Antonio, Texas. I'm also the hair replacement coach. In this capacity, I train other licensed professionals in the expertise of non-surgical hair replacement and medical hair loss. And this training allows them, the certified training allows them to be competitive with the corporate big boys of hair replacement. After a conversation I had recently, I found myself answering a whole lot of questions from licensed stylists about hair loss. So I thought, this would make a great topic for a webinar. So I thought I'd take the time just to share this information with you. I hope you find it useful in your hair treatment centers. Initially, as cosmetologists or stylists, we practice hair artistry. Many times the focus is on the finished look and what that entails, the cut, the color, the style, etc. But as we pursue and evolve in our careers as hair loss providers, we develop a deeper understanding of knowledge of our client's hair, and we discover that the many issues and the symptoms that we see on top of the head, whether it's a breakage or shedding or dryness or oily scalp, thinning or balding, whatever the symptom may be, that most times we are dealing with outward symptoms that are actually signs of internal problems. I recently realized that decades later after graduating cosmetology school, that my regret is that there was only a snippet of time devoted to human biology as it relates to hair and skin and our scalp. And many times it's not what we see about the topical applications that we use or even suggest to our clients, but it's the internal things going on with our clients that we're dealing with. No, don't get me wrong, we are not doctors, but we are certified trichologists and professionals in the practice of trichology, or the science of hair and scalp maladies or conditions. So personally, I think it's our responsibility as professionals to observe and to be able to identify the different causations of hair loss during our consultations. And I always think our consultations should occur prior to providing treatments or services to clients. So with all that being said, today I will briefly discuss the top 6 reasons of hair loss. Now, just knowing the basics will help you determine whether or not you will recommend the suitability of products for troublesome scalp conditions or non-surgical or even surgical hair replacement. Now, if you'll determine if you're capable of saving their existing hair or even the right haircut to make the hair appear fuller and thicker. So what we're going to discuss today in our presentation will be why it's important to know the reasons of hair loss. We're going to talk about the basic facts about hair and, of course, the most common types of hair loss. So let's summarize what we already know about hair, shall we? Hair is composed of a tough protein called keratin. Now, it also has a growth cycle, and I like to use the acronym ACT, ACT, to remember that, simply as the anagen, catagen, and a telogen growth cycle. Okay, so briefly, anagen, it is the active growth phase and can last anywhere between 2 to 6 years, and approximately 90 to 95% of hair are in the active growth phase, and roughly 5 to 10% are in the telogen phase or the transition phase. The resting phase, telogen, excuse me. The second phase is catagen, which is the transition phase, and it lasts anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks. It's a shorter cycle, whereas the last and final stage is the resting phase called telogen, which lasts between 5 to 6 weeks, and after the telogen phase, it returns. That cycle goes back to anagen, the active growth phase, okay? Normally, an individual with normal, healthy hair loses around 50 to 100 strands of hair per day, and anything more than that provides to be problematic. There's a problem. There's an issue with excessive shedding. Okay, so hair can also stretch up to half or 50% of its original length before it breaks or snaps. And healthy hair, the absorbability, healthy hair can absorb up to 30% of its weight in water, while damaged hair can absorb up to 45%. Now, this is a picture of the hair growth cycle that we went over earlier. Isn't hair amazing? I guess that's why I'm so fascinated with it. Now, those are just a few facts as we learned, as we work towards our 1,500 total hours accreditations of just becoming licensed stylist. But what we may or may not learn as we grow in our capacity as stylists are some of the reasons of hair loss, and that's what I want to share with you today. The first reason I want to identify as a reason of hair loss is going to be our diet. Now, it's funny, practicing here in San Antonio, I can pretty much, in a consultation, once I identify issues, I can prescribe or recommend almost anything to put on a person's scalp or hair, different concoctions and lotions and creams and stinky and smell good, all that stuff, and they'll do it. But when it comes to me talking about diet, there's a big step back, there's a pushback. But diet can be a major factor in hair loss. And some of the things that I wanted to identify are nutrient deficiencies, vitamin A overloads or overdoses, high animal fat intake, which is normally by the cooking with animal fat products, frying with greasy foods, or extreme weight loss programs. So those are the certain things that I kind of want to talk about as far as diet. So we've heard the adage, you are what you eat, right? What you eat or even lack thereof can definitely be a cause and effect of hair loss. Remember, not consuming adequate amounts of hair-healthy foods can lead to lack of luster, hair thinning, and hair loss. You want to be sure to include dark green leafy vegetables like spinach into your diet because it's full of amazing nutrients. It has tons of vitamin A, plus iron, beta-carotene, folate, and vitamins like vitamin C. Now, all of these work together for a healthy scalp and mane. They keep your hair moisturized so it doesn't break. Your hair also benefits from top nutrients in your hair from foods found in, protein-rich foods like salmon, poultry, eggs, and nuts, and from different various sources of vitamins like vitamin C from oranges or lemons and tomatoes and various fruits and vegetables, as in also calcium, iron, potassium, and other nutrients, and from various sources from the food group. And this is just a food chart for healthy hair, and you'll see different foods. It's just a limited chart, but you'll get the idea. Now, also keep in mind, in looking at the food chart and the array of vitamins, that there is something known as too much of a good thing. Too much vitamin A or overload or consuming foods or supplements containing the nutrient can also trigger hair loss. Now, this information I got from the American Academy of Dermatology. Now, just like a lack of protein and protein-enriched foods may cause your body to start rationing it by shutting down hair growth, this can happen within 2 or 3 months after a drop of protein intake. That's why when I am counseling about nutrition, and I'll also ask about their eating habits, and if they've cut out a certain food, normally it's within that 2 to 3 month period that after they'll see their hair starting to shed profusely or breakage or whatever the issue may be. So that is normally the time period or the window that people start to notice problems. Now, when talking about diet, also consider this, that sudden weight loss is also a form of physical trauma that can result in thinning or hair loss. Now, this could even happen if you have weight loss that is ultimately good for you. You're losing weight because you're morbidly obese or you have other health conditions, and losing weight would be good for you. But it is the possibility that weight loss itself stresses your body if it's done very rapidly or not done correctly, or that you're not eating right, as we spoke of earlier. That can result in a vitamin or a mineral deficiency, which can affect your hair negatively. Reason 2 that I wanted to identify is going to be health. I wanted to talk about illnesses and poor vitamin assimilation or the absorbability of vitamins in your body, menopause, burns or scarring on the scalp, pregnancy, cystic acne, or even poor blood circulation or anemia. Now, illness is a definite factor of hair loss. You find that when people go through prolonged or even acute illnesses, that they can also lose hair. But diagnoses such as anemia, hypo or hyperthyroidism, autoimmune disorders, lupus, pregnancy or menopause, severe anxiety or stress disorders, or just to name a few, can cause hair loss. Now, I remember reading somewhere that almost 1 in 10 women aged between 20 and 49 suffer from poor blood circulation or anemia due to an iron deficiency, and that's the most common type of anemia. And I know that because I have to take an iron supplement daily, or I will have problems associated with anemia. Now, this is easily fixable It's an easily form of fixation from hair loss. If you are diagnosed with anemia, normally a regimen, as I mentioned, of an iron supplement can be prescribed by your physician or your healthcare practitioner, which should solve the problem. Now, lupus, which is a type of an autoimmune disease, can also trigger hair loss because it's an autoimmune disorder. It's so amazing how the body gets confused, and the immune system sees the hair as like a foreign invader, and it targets it by mistake. It's kind of like a case of mistaken identity where overzealous immune cells try to protect the body by attacking the hair. And many times, unfortunately, this type of hair loss is scarring, meaning that the hair ultimately does not grow back. Reason 3 that I wanted to discuss briefly is medical reasons: alopecia, birth control pill, chemotherapy, hormonal imbalances, radiation exposure, and medications. Now, in medical, just as pregnancy or hormonal changes can cause hair loss, so can switching or actually going off birth control pills. Now, this can cause, and remember this terminology, it's a type of a hair disorder. It can cause telogen effluvium. Telogen effluvium, which is diffuse hair thinning. And it may be more likely if you have a family history of hair loss. Now, the change in the hormonal balance that occurs at menopause may also have the same effect, or diffuse thinning. Now, the androgen, or the male hormone receptors on the scalp, become activated, and the hair follicles will miniaturize or become smaller, and then you actually start to lose more hair as a result. Now, when we talk about medical and we want to identify medication as a culprit, now, during my consultations, I'll always ask about medications that a client can be on, and I'll even ask them to bring a list. And that's when I pull out my physician's desk reference, or my PDR, and then I can actually go and see if a side effect from these medications are hair loss. Now, there are certain classes of medication that may also promote hair loss. Now, more common among them are certain blood thinners or blood pressure drugs known as beta blockers. When you have people who are on prescription drugs for high blood pressure or beta blockers, you'll kind of see a side effect of that, or it's hair loss. Now, other drugs that might cause hair loss include methotrexate, which is used for rheumatoid conditions and also some conditions, lithium for bipolar disorder, or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or NSAIDs. Now, that's non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or NSAIDs, NSAIDs, including ibuprofen and possibly antidepressants. Reason 4 are genetic factors of hair loss. Now, it's just almost like the luck of the draw, the rolling of the dice in genetic factors. Some people can get it, some people won't, depending on what's in their family. Now, some people have a predisposition or an inherited predisposition. We talk about cystic acne or even inflammation. Those are some of the genetic factors. Now, they have a predisposition for hair loss due to inherited or genetic conditions. Most commonly, female pattern hair loss, called androgenic or androgenetic alopecia. Well, it's basically the female version, if you think about it, of male pattern baldness. Simply put, if you come from a family where parents or grandparents, auntie or uncles started to have hair loss at a certain age, then it's almost plausible that you may be prone to it as well. But this is what I've learned in through study and observation is that unlike men, women don't tend to have receding hairlines. Instead, with female pattern baldness, you're more apt to see a widening and more thinning in the part. So as the parts of their hair start to widen and thinning out. And this is kind of shown in the Ludwig hair loss classification scale that I use. The Ludwig hair loss classification scale, during my consultations at my hair treatment centers, I tend to share this scale for both men and women. And as you see, it is very detailed with varying degrees and classes of hair loss. It goes from class A, which is minimal, all the way to class 1, which is minimal to none, and class 7, which is complete, and also show pattern. Whereas as you can go down to see where women, you'll see their parts start to widen. That is more reminiscent of female, excuse me, my voice, female hair pattern baldness. Now, another condition that we'll talk about when we kind of view genetic are inflammatory or cystic conditions, which normally run in the genes. They're extreme cases of acne or cystic acne that block the pores of the scalp and inflammation of the sebaceous glands and hair follicles that can also cause hair loss. Excuse me. The fifth reason, or reason number 5, are environmental causes. And research indicates that phototoxic effects of sunlight or pollutants in the air or chemicals in our water or even hazardous employment environments. Sustained ultraviolet radiation or sunlight on an unprotected scalp can damage skin cells in the scalp as well as the cells of the hair follicles. This also includes pollutants in the air and chemicals in the water that can be causes of hair loss. And when you kind of think about hazardous employment, it just talks about I am relating to depending on where you work. There can be harmful elements lurking around. An office environment with no wind circulation, or even if you work in a manufacturing plant or somewhere where there's limited free air circulating, or even better yet, exposure to chemicals that may be harmful to your hair. So it is definite. Environmental factors can have a devastating effect on scalp, hair, and hair follicles. Reason number 6, we're going to talk about stress. Chronic stress, traumatic stress, as in braiding, dreadlocks, wigs, pulling as in trichotillomania, ponytails or buns, or aggressive combing and brushing. Now, when I talk about stress, a lot of times we are talking about emotional stress, which can be devastating and can also be a culprit. But in this definition of stress, it's not related to the emotional stress. It is a category, it's more related to the physical stress endured by the hair, causing hair loss, and trauma caused intentionally or unintentionally. And one source of this type is trichotillomania. Trichotillomania is an OCD or obsessive-compulsive disorder that involves recurrent, irresistible urges to pull out hair from your scalp, even your eyebrows or other areas of your body, despite trying to stop. Okay, another stressful type of hair loss that we probably see, that we're familiar with, is going to be traction alopecia, which is caused from excessive pulling of your hair throughout the years from styling in ponytails or buns or braids or locks. Other stressors can include excessive use and application of chemicals such as hydrogen peroxide, um, um, hair relaxers or perms or bleaches and dyes. So as you can see, there are many reasons why people are losing their hair. And I just wanted to highlight a few of them today. Since the conversation I had earlier with a colleague posed a lot of questions, I thought this would be an awesome topic to share. So now we're at the point, in our webinar presentation where I entertain questions, and I see that we have a question, and I think I'm just going to take this one question because time is limited. Let me see, what do you? Okay, let me say this. That even those of you who view this webinar on playback, you can still submit questions that you have to my email at customercare at Trinity Lace Wigs. That's customercare, customercare at TrinityLaceWigs.com. Okay, so the question I have is, in your salon, what is the most common hair loss you see? Oh, that is an awesome question. Thanks for asking. The most common hair loss I see in my hair treatment center is actually the most common diagnosis of hair loss, which happens to be androgenetic alopecia, commonly referred to as male or female pattern hair loss. It is the most common diagnosed and seen. Specifically, this is a type of hair loss in which androgens or male hormones, and most notably the hormone DHT. And I'm glad you asked this question because I really don't think that I expounded on DHT. DHT is the hydrotestosterone. The hydrotestosterone is to blame for the miniaturization of hair follicles and subsequent hair loss. So good call, good answer. Good question. I appreciate it. Okay, so in interest of time, this is going to be the end of today's webinar, and it was extremely and incredibly great. I hope you enjoyed the information half as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And I just want to say I'm so excited, and I'm looking forward to working with those of you who have signed up for my coaching and mentor program. And I have some exciting things planned for you. So for those of you who are interested in signing up, you can always email me at customercare at TrinityLaceWigs.com, okay, for more information. Take care and be blessed, and this is the end. Thanks for attending, and God bless you. See you next time. Goodbye.